climate change in view of the gravity of this phenomenon. It is highly important for the international community to make concerted efforts in order to develop the capacities of countries of the world to address these changes that affect the lives of ordinary people and the path of development, as well as the future generations of the world.
Egypt hosts COP27 as a recognition of its determination over the years to support climate action and to undertake its responsibilities, being fully cognizant of the importance of dealing with climate change in an effective manner through a consensual multilateral process that provides the opportunity for all parties to undertake their responsibilities to address this challenge, the challenge that affects ordinary people's lives and livelihoods, a challenge that we must face collectively if we are to address the devastating effects of climate change, and that we do not go beyond the point of no return to preserve this planet for future generations. I have to say that I am satisfied with the process of consultations that have been undertaken during this year with the help of the COP26 presidency and his team, Minister Alok Sharma, and the designate president's team during the informal consultations that certainly have contributed to a successful launch of COP27. The issue of the agenda has been adopted smoothly after Herculean consultations over the last 48 hours that were chaired by the presidency team, and are delighted to have adopted for the first time an agenda item on the most important issue of loss and damage, an issue that is recognized by the vast majority of the international community as a very fundamental issue, one that has to be addressed with transparency and dedication because of what we all see in the span of 1 year of the consequences related to climate change that have affected millions of citizens across the world. I want to also take this opportunity, this being the first COP for the existing Executive Secretary, Mr. Simon Steele, in undertaking his responsibility and leading the Secretariat in preparation for COP27. I have to commend the professionalism of the Secretariat, his own commitment and determination and experience and wisdom, which has certainly been invaluable to the presidency and to the process. I welcome his assuming his position, and I look forward to working with him through these 2 weeks of convening of the COP and during the coming year where Egypt will be the president and will be handing over the responsibilities subsequently to the United Arab Emirates. I thank you, and I look forward to responding to any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. I hand over to the Executive Secretary. Simon, please.
Okay, thank you, Alex, and a warm welcome to all of you, and thank you, Sameh, for your kind words. And I have to start by thanking actually the Secretariat team. It's their hard work over the course of the last year that has gotten us to this point. I have come in just in the last few weeks, so I certainly can't lay any claim to the preparations that have gone into it. So as I said, it's a credit to the Secretariat team. You will have heard my opening speech, so it's not my intention to repeat myself there. But it's clear that the world needs to come together to align itself with the magnitude of the crisis that we face. And that is why we're here in these very difficult geopolitical times. And we have an opportunity, if we are able to create a safe political space within this compound to focus on the matters at hand in terms of addressing the climate crisis. If we are able to do that, then we have a chance to move the agenda forward. And as I said, we have an opportunity to demonstrate in these difficult times how we can truly come together for the greater good. From my conversations with parties so far, I can see that there are areas of common ground. The delegations, parties now need to decide on how much of that political influence, how much of that politics influences the technical progress that we need to make. I'm certainly excited to have taken on this role a few weeks ago, and as said in my speech, I have a vision of where collectively we need to go together. The depth and the knowledge and the skills within the UNFCCC is absolutely incredible, and it is an honor to be part of that team. So as we pivot towards implementation, we will be supporting parties to come with as much ambition as possible across all of the negotiating tracks. So over the next couple of days, proceedings will focus on the Climate Implementation Summit, a high-level segment with statements, roundtables, and side events with the participation of heads of states or governments, and I believe we're at 110 heads of state who will be present over the next couple of days. The high-level champions in the Marrakesh Partnership Program will also get underway tomorrow, fostering collaboration from the whole of society to deliver greenhouse gas emission reductions and help ensure a just transition to a net zero economy and a sustainable future. I will be insisting over the coming weeks and beyond on the need for greater ambition and urgent action to avert the climate crisis from all actors, all sectors, all regions, all nations. And as I said in my speech, from everybody, everywhere, every day, doing everything possible. As recent reports have shown, emissions are not coming down at the required speed or scale. Mitigation needs to be increased to keep the 1.5 degree limit and to ensure that we have a safer world. Resilience is not growing in a way that protects societies from the growing impacts of climate change. Adaptation must therefore be further enhanced to prevent ever-growing loss and suffering. The issue of loss and damage needs to be credibly addressed, and the time has come for us to do so. All countries, especially the most vulnerable and least developed, must receive the support they need to achieve their climate goals. So finance is, as ever, a critical issue in order to meet the magnitude of the crisis that is faced. And then finally, transparency and accountability. These must be strengthened to consolidate trust and collaboration and to improve the monitoring of climate action. So with the leadership of the incoming presidency, the support of all presiding officers, the goodwill of parties, and in full knowledge of our responsibility to this generation and those to come, I look forward to an intense, productive, but ultimately successful outcome. I thank you, and I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Executive Secretary. We now take questions from the floor. Could you please introduce yourself and your media organization? And you would need to wait for the microphone because we are also streamed on social media and on the internet. Let me start in the first row, the gentleman with the blue shirt. The microphone is coming.
Yes,
Seth Borenstein, the Associated Press. Thank you for doing this. For Secretary Steele, looking at the, can you shed some light on the inner goings on the agenda item for loss and damage? That what caused you, what brought along an agreement on that, on the agenda item, and can you tell us, does this give you more hope for some outcome? In general, just are you seeing more light at the end of this tunnel for that issue because of the adoption of this this agenda item?
Okay, thank you, Seth. There's always light at the end of the tunnel. There has to be. When we look at where we were a few weeks ago, where the discussion was whether or not loss and damage would even be on the agenda, and the fact that it has been adopted as an agenda item demonstrates progress and parties taking a mature and constructive attitude towards this. This is a difficult subject area. It's been floating for 30 plus years, so that the fact that it is there as a substantive agenda item, I believe bodes well. What I would encourage and what I would hope is that parties continue in that spirit of finding common areas to agree on, to start outlining what the process, the way forward for loss and damage can be in a time-bound manner. So I'm certainly encouraged by what I've seen, what we have seen over these past few days. What will be most telling is how those discussions progress in the substantive discussion over the next couple of weeks.
The lady here in the first row in black and white.
Thank you. My name is Suzy El-Genedi, Deputy Chief Editor of Al-Ahram Al-Arabi magazine, and my question is for Minister Sameh Shoukry concerning Egypt have succeeded in this COP27 than other COPs that failed in putting loss and damage on the agenda. But what is the mechanism, financing mechanism for this? Will it be like the $100 billion that ever haven't been reached, or there is another mechanism so that we can reach it? Thank you very much.
Well, we definitely regard this as a success for the parties, a success for the process. It is the culmination of a long process of consultations, specifically during this last year, that has culminated in very intensive consultations over the last 48 hours. That has shown, as the Executive Secretary has mentioned, a degree of maturity, a degree of willingness to compromise, and a recognition of the importance to a vast number, if not the majority, of the international community of addressing this issue. I think it would be highly unproductive to speculate on what the substantive content of the negotiating process will lead to, but certainly everybody is hopeful. First of all, the determination of a time frame to conclude, and is hopeful that the political will that has been demonstrated currently and that has led us to the inclusion of the item will continue in the coming negotiating process to lead us to a conclusion that is satisfactory, that takes into consideration the interest of all the parties. Again, anything that we do effectively has to be on the basis of our common efforts, and that we leave no one behind. This is the principles that will lead to our success, and this is what we as presidents will strive to achieve.
The lady in the second row, white shirt, on this side.
Hello, Hannah Thomas-Peter from Sky News. This is a question for both Mr. Shoukry and Mr. Steele. What are your greatest fears for the year ahead, given the warnings that the world is not on track to reduce its emissions adequately?
I think, as everybody recognizes, the current geopolitical situation, the consequences in terms of the global economic crisis has put quite a burden on the process of meeting the challenges related to climate change and fulfilling the commitments that have been made. And what I would advocate is that we should not allow for the circumstances that we face today. And in comparison to climate change, to the future of the globe, they are transitional. They are of today. While climate change and its impact is existential, and thereby we should not detract from our ability to move forward, to undertake our commitments, to raise the level of our ambition to meet that challenge, and not to in any way take advantage or refer to the current circumstances as justification, to take the easy road of backtracking supposedly on the premise that there are other priorities. This is the main priority for the globe, for the citizens of the world, those who have been affected. And we've seen only this year the degree of the effect on people, whether in Pakistan, in the millions who have been displaced, who have lost their lives, in the fires and the heat waves of Europe and the United States and their consequences on material loss. All of this must maintain the focus on what we have committed to and raise our ambitions and reach our targets of zero emissions, but also deal effectively with adaptation. If adaptation is not met sufficiently, if the issue of finance is not fulfilled to enable especially developing nations to undertake both adaptation and mitigation processes, then we will lag behind. There is no room to lag behind. There is no room except to move forward if we are to maintain our objectives.
I think President Shukri has outlined this very, very well. The fear is other priorities take precedence. And when we look at the crises that surround us, all are important. But there is no one single crisis as critical, as impactful as climate change. Wars will end. Inflation, cost of living, energy crisis, these will come to an end. But what we are seeing, what the science is telling us, and what we're seeing in all of our communities, all around the world, climate change is ever present and will only get worse. So the need to focus, refocus, and that's what this COP gives us an opportunity to do, on what needs to be done, because we know what needs to be done, we know how it needs to be done, and we know who needs to do it. So the need to build momentum and to keep moving forward should be at the heart of everything that is not just discussed here in Sharm el-Sheikh, but the actions taken and those that continue. And again, just building on that fear is that we lose another day, another week, another month, another year, because we can't. And that backsliding, however justified, those parties need to double down and catch up and move forward, because we are not where we need to be.
The lady in the first row in white shirt.
Hello, my name is, sorry, I have a bit of a cold, Anne-Marie. I'm with the Africa Report. My question is a bit twofold, and it's for both Secretary Steele and President Shukri. It's the fact that the losses and damages was discussed even up until early this morning, so there was a bit of a pushback to it. And I wanted to know, first of all, what were some reasons, main reasons for the reluctance on the parts of others to accept it into the agenda? And secondly, now that it is in the agenda, what main points need to be touched on for it to actually be deemed successful in this COP?
Well, I think this is not a new issue. This is an issue, as the Executive Secretary has mentioned, that's been with us for a substantial number of years. And there have been reservations aired as to the extent and the responsibilities that might be entailed from the addition in an official manner of this item on the agenda. But we have sensed over this year specifically a change in the positions of delegations that had reservations. I think this has come about because of the momentum that has been created since Paris, since Glasgow, and the need to maintain that momentum and the recognition that that can only be done if there is a sense of equity and confidence and trust among all the parties that all of their interests are being justifiably considered in an equitable manner. So we, I think, can go beyond whatever reservations existed and move forward again and look at the positive development in the inclusion on the agenda, and that this does open the door for a more in-depth, more transparent consultation and negotiation process where the landing zone for whatever conclusions we will have to arrive at through consensus, through building bridges, through accommodations, through flexibility. This is how we can achieve our goals, and it is again the communal nature of what we are endeavoring to do that has to be at the forefront.
Thank you. I wouldn't read too much into that right now. What is clear is the space has been created for the discussion. This is about building trust between parties, the fact that parties can come together and resolve whatever issues there were with regard to the agenda item. As I said at the beginning, is a very positive and constructive sign. The real test will be the quality of the discussion that takes place now over the next 2 weeks, and judgment will be based on the quality of the outcomes. This is a complex issue, very complex, but it's also a critical issue. The two things that the agenda item asks for, it's about specifically addressing loss and damage, and then the funding arrangements around it. So the space is there, the parties are engaged. Let's monitor over the course of the next 2 weeks where we go with this.
The gentleman here on this side in the 4th row.
Thank you. Leo Hickman from Carbon Brief. It's a question about the world's two largest emitters, the US and China. What do you need those two parties specifically to bring to these negotiations to help the most vulnerable and the least responsible for climate change? Thank you.
I would suggest we look at all major emitters. It's what do all parties need to bring to the table, and it's clear in terms of national NDCs what they need to do, how far those parties, all parties, need to lean forward. We know where the majority of emissions are generated, and that is within the group of 20, generating 80% of emissions there. also contributing to 85% of global GDP. So the wealth, the technology, the means to address what needs to be done resides there. It's important that parties cooperate. And again, the space that's created within this, this COP process provides party with that opportunity. But where there isn't collaboration in terms of national obligations, all parties know what they need to do and when they need to do it.
The gentleman here, second row.
محمد يوسف الإذاعة المصرية. سؤالي لمعالي الوزير سامح شكري وزير الخارجية.
My question is to the COP27 President, Mr. Shukri. Egypt, when it presented on behalf of the African continent its request to host COP27, everybody knows that the Egyptian government spares no efforts in order to alleviate the impact of climate change in Africa. And given that Cairo keeps insisting that the African continent is the most exposed to damage during this climate change crisis, and is the least responsible for emissions. And so the question, Your Excellency, Minister, so what is the share that the African continent is getting in terms of funding, in terms of technology transfer, and in terms of greening projects linked to COP27? Well, indeed, as you said, African countries are among the hardest hit countries and most affected by climate change without being major contributors to this problem. But African countries have shown a readiness to shoulder responsibilities in countering and responding to the negative impact of climate change. These African countries need assistance and support in terms of building its capacity, in terms of adaptation as well as mitigation. Indeed, the funding question is a crucial question, and also the just transition to renewables is as important, because these will enable African countries to continue on the same positive track towards sustainable development and towards taking out its citizens of the poverty sphere. And African countries and the whole continent is part and parcel of the negotiating process, and they have shown interest in all of the items on the agenda and are working towards ensuring that the consultations and the negotiations that are ongoing will be supportive to these countries in shouldering those responsibilities. And we're all looking forward to this COP27 and the various initiatives that will be launched during it, and also with the participation of the private sector and the business world and the IFIs and the NGOs. We are looking indeed forward to various solutions and suggestions in terms of technology transfer, which give the opportunity to African countries and developing countries at large the opportunity to build their own capabilities and capacity to counter climate change, whether we're talking about mitigation or adaptation, and also in terms of contributing constructively to negotiations among parties.
So we have time for one more question. The lady here in the second row.
Thank you. Thanks for doing this. Secretary Steele, you mentioned the group of G20 countries. There's a number of leaders from the G20 that are going to be absent from the implementation summit. I believe the leaders of China and India, but also Australia and Canada, will not be attending the implementation summit. Some have justified their absence by the fact that this is not a decision COP, quotes. how important is it for leaders to continue to be engaged in this process as we move towards implementation? And how important is it for leaders to keep coming back to these meetings year after year as we shift from target setting to implementation?
Could you please introduce yourself?
Hello. So I'm Chloe Fran from Climate Home News.
Hi, Chloe. It would be wonderful if we had every leader of every party represented at every COP. This COP, we have 110 leaders here. That is a very positive and good signal. Leadership is absolutely critical, whether it is at a domestic level. And the first measure is our leaders showing the path in terms of their own domestic agendas in meeting the Paris Agreement. And then opportunities such as this, which is to get them all together so we can focus on how they can collaborate, share experiences, and consider the challenges still faced, which will be done over the next couple of days with the roundtables, the leaders' roundtables. The presidency has created a very rich and innovative series of sessions where leaders will be discussing and sharing their thoughts on all of the critical elements that are central to climate action. And the representation around those tables, we're confident, will generate some very powerful insights. And from this, further direction to the process, which will shine the way for the remainder of the 2 weeks and provide some political direction to the negotiations that are about to take place. So in terms of the representation, we always want more, but I believe there is sufficient right now for us to have a very productive outcome.
Thank you very much, Shukran. Thank you very much for coming. Please watch out for the next press conferences. Let me just give you the numbers of today, this morning. So we have registered today 26,965 government representatives, we call them party members, 13,888 observers, and 3,321 media representatives, in total 44,174. Thank you very much.
May I just add, as a word of welcome to all of those numbers that have been indicated. And I think those numbers in themselves are recognizably the span of attention that is increasing from COP to COP, the importance that is attached to this endeavor. And all are welcomed, whether delegates, civil society, NGOs, private sector. All of the stakeholders are fundamental, are essential for us to achieve progress. And we are happy to receive them in Sharm el-Sheikh and hope that the environment that we have and the environment that we have created will be conducive to a very productive outcome, which is satisfactory to the constituents. Those constituents are the men and women, children, who we all seek to undertake this responsibility on their behalf and for their futures. Thank you.